Hello, howdy, and welcome back to season 2 of the Texas Private School Podcast. As always, I am one-third of your hosting crew, Wes Tolleson, joining you from College Station, Texas. Walker Lott also joins us from College Station, the great city, and Ryan Schroeder joins us from the slightly above average city, Stillwater, Oklahoma. But Walker, I'll turn to you first. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. Welcome to be back. It's been a long, long time, but I'm finally back, ready to talk football again. It's, week one now. I'm excited, man.
100%. Ryan, how are we doing up in Oklahoma?
Let's go back for some Texas private school football. I'm up in Oklahoma, but TAPS live streams are a real thing. So we're going to be looking at those.
We are 100% getting a subscription and consuming as much TAPS football as we can this season. One thing I will say before we get started, we have a gigantic segment and guest coming on at the end of the episode. We have Greg Tepper from Dave Campbell's High School Football, aka the Texas Football Bible. We have him on. He gives us some guest picks. He is probably one of the most knowledgeable people in this industry, and you'll hear that with his wisdom, with his own picks. So Walker made that magic happen. Hats off to you. Thank you thank you to Greg in advance. Walker, thank you for getting him on. That was huge. But Walker, you have some notes you want to hit on before we get to all the big stuff. So go ahead and take that.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to first, I did the giant school tour, and it took a lot of weeks and a couple months to do. And, we went around and I got to meet a lot of the coaching staffs of a lot of schools, over 30. I think I went into around 29, I think, to 30 schools. And I put miles into my car. Absolutely. And, for sure, as you'll see, we haven't released a lot of those episodes because as college kids, we got busy this summer, and jobs came in, and, other stuff for college came in, and I wasn't able to really sit down and edit that. And so, we're trying to figure out how we really want to do that still, but I think we'll release them throughout the season, just interviews and stuff like that. Maybe the best clips. Don't really know how exactly we want to do it, but we haven't forgotten. But I really want to appreciate every school that's reached out to me. I always said, if you reached out, I was going to go, and I went to almost every school I can. I went Austin, San Antonio, Houston, Fort Worth, Dallas. And I know, Wes, I believe you even did a couple East Texas schools, and we even got Midland. Midland came down to College Station for the 7-on-7. So we got them there. So that was really cool to see. So even West Texas. But yeah, I really want to thank to all the coaching staff, all the players. Hopefully you're watching now because you know who we are now. So just want to say thank you for that. Moving into the next topic is going to be just kind of the notes that I've learned from throughout the summer and things I've caught up. Firstly, I think that 2024 quarterback Turner Murdoch over there at Second Baptist is going to be an absolute stud. Be on the lookout for him. I think he's going to make his mark as one of the best 24s, probably in private school this season. And if he balls out like I maybe think he will, he might turn some heads for the best in the state. Even though that 24 class in the state is absolutely loaded. Also, we'll talk about it more later. That 2025 Parrish now quarterback Sawyer Anderson. They're going to be the two young guys in this state. They're going to be insane to watch. I also wanted to shout out Spring Frassity. I believe that's how you maybe say it. The wide receiver, Zamari Bruce. I went and watched him at the 7-on-7 meet at Fort Bend. I think that man is so underrated. I did not even know that school existed. I'm going to be completely honest. And that kid can jump out of the gym and was making plays all day. No one could cover him, not even close. And honestly, he will probably be arguably the best wide receiver in all of private school. That man is a stud. And I mean that truly. He is 6'3", all of that. And it is just an athletic monster. He is insane. He's the only reason that school really has a shot every year. You throw it up to him, he'll probably come down with it. That type of player is stud. Going down to San Antonio, when we passed through Central Catholic, I know me and Wes both saw that offensive line for Central Catholic is unreal. That will be the best offensive line in private school next year, without a doubt. You have two guys going to UTSA, Ben Rios and DeAndre Marshall. You have another guy in the middle who's going to be a stud. And not going to lie, that's going to be a dark horse team for TAPS D1 next year. If they can make over the hump, because if they did it like they did last year and Parrish go from the bottom up, they're going to have to compete with Parrish, and that's going to be hard to do. But I mean, if anyone could do it, I think this will be the year for Central Catholic. With that team will be sneaky, and I'm really excited to see him do it. Some other guys, specialist talk. I was really, really happy to see that Levi Hancock out of Brian Brazos Christian got his commitment to Texas A&M to be a long snapper. He is the best long snapper in the country. So he stayed local, wanted to stay local, loved the school, all that, and I'm really happy to see it. And then on the other side, the other big school in the state, Texas, got Will Stone, the kicker out of Austin Regents. So when I went and saw him, I went, holy cow, this man can kick a ball. And he was dominant, a 5-star true kicker in the country. And Texas got a good one. And I believe he got a true offer. So that means he is going full ride to Texas for kicking. And so I just wanted to shout him out. Shout out to him for being a great player. And he ultimately ended up in a school in his own city. So, the other thing, I'm really, really excited to see the D2 Houston schools of Second Baptist and Fort Bend really step up to the challenge this year. It's going to be really exciting to see them step up because I think they're going to cause a lot of noise that usually they don't this year. And they're going to make it harder for Austin Regions to make it back to the state championship this year. We're going to move in now to Greg Tepper. Again, big guest. This is probably the biggest guest we could have had on for week one. Appreciate him for giving his time away for, a little bit just to talk to us about sports and football, especially. So thank you. And y'all enjoy. All right. Now for our last segment of the day, before we get into the rest of the games, we want to welcome on to the managing editor of Dave Campbell's Texas Football. And also we'll see him sometimes on Valley Sports Southwest. One of the best men in the industry, Greg Tepper. Thank you for coming on, man.
Guys, it's a pleasure. It's a joy to hop on with the finest private school podcast in Texas. I'm comfortable saying that. That's I'm probably just made it like 4 or 5 people mad, but I'll go with it. It's good.
Walker, please clip that.
I will.
Have that on loop. Have that on loop over and over and over again. That's what we're just gonna have.
Absolutely. We have, first episode of the new year, and we have to start it off with a bang with you. I first want to say, looking through, I saw the video, you talking about your father, the other day on your Twitter. I just want to say I'm happy. It's heading in the right direction at the moment, with all that. So I want to say, we're all, your father is all in our prayers, all of that jazz, hoping the best for that situation. But yeah, I'm really happy, hearing about that. So
sure. No, I appreciate that. My father's going through a couple of health issues right now, but things are trending in the right direction. And, the biggest thing that the reason I kind of want to say that stuff is to just, urge people to get vaccinated because, we felt the ripple effects personally as a family. And it's, the thing that you can do to stay out of the hospital is get vaccinated. So I hate to get on a high horse there and preach to people. And I don't want to do that, but it's, I thought it was important to use our family's situation as an example of the importance of that. So I appreciate you guys, saying prayers for him. We certainly appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then secondly, before we go into it, I just wanted to say kind of a thank you. We all grew up not listening, now listening now because of all your podcasts, but, reading Dave Campbell's and, you were one of the first to truly cover private school football heavily, and all of that. So, always, at least for me, I know for Wes too, seeing our name and Dave Campbell's growing up was always a really cool, special thing. So I just wanted to say for your company at first, just say thank you, man.
Well, look, we appreciate it. Certainly, we recognize how important what we do is to a lot of people around the state. Like it's a touchstone in people's lives, and it's something that people come back to, and people that people have a true connection to at Dave Campbell's. And it's it's all I'm doing is just carrying the torch that Dave lit. You know what I mean? That's my job, and so I'm just trying to. I tell people a lot that I don't actually care if you like the magazine as long as a 96-year-old man in Waco does. Like everything else will take care of itself as long as he's happy. So, that's very kind of you. And yeah, we're trying to do our best. We're trying to do right by Dave and cover football as extensively and comprehensively as we can. And that includes the private school ranks. And I mentioned to you guys, in the past, sometimes we've fallen short. I've wanted to, in my time as managing editor, make a concerted effort to expand our private school coverage and stuff like that. And that's something I'm pretty passionate about. And so I'm glad that, people pick up the magazine every year. You youngsters, you youths, the youths. I have to explain to you what magazines are and print media, thank you. I appreciate you guys going out and picking them up every year. That certainly means a lot. And not just because it helps pay my mortgage.
No, I got to say a couple things. First of all, you're downplaying that way too much, because I can tell you firsthand from being not far removed from being a high school football player, the day that comes out is basically a holiday in Texas. I mean, every single kid that plays football and all of my friends immediately flip to the back pages and look for your team's write-up. And you want to see if your coach submitted your name for that write-up, because you feel like you're a celebrity, honestly. And on a second note, I got to apologize if I sound a little nervous or I stumble over my words. I feel like I'm in the presence of this behemoth figure. And I'm not trying to blow smoke. This is how in a high of reverence I hold this magazine and the entire company. So really thank you for coming on. I mean that genuinely.
Well, and I appreciate that. And I will accept that on behalf of Dave Campbell's, which it is, look, it's super cool for me to work there. It's awesome. You know what I mean? My bad days at work involve football. That's pretty great. And so, we just know how much this brand and how much Dave Campbell's Texas football means to so many people. And that's what kind of keeps us going. And it's a collection of people who are super passionate. And we really hope that when you read our stuff, whether it's in the magazine or it's at texasfootball.com or you listen to our podcast or anything like that, that you hear that passion, that we're not faking it. We actually love this stuff. This stuff is really fun for us. And so, it's just a joy to work for Dave Campbell's Texas football and be a small part of this long Texas legacy. Yeah,
absolutely. We'll ask, we'll do two questions here. I kind of want to, talk about with you, I want to just talk about, the whole of private school football here in Texas. Cause you'll probably know it better than anyone, just how, not comparing it, to the North Shores or the West Lakes, of course, because that's two, it's different levels. But how do you think it compares to the public school eyes in a lot of ways? And, what do you think is the overall reception, to private school football here in Texas?
So I think that, private school football here in Texas faces in a lot of ways unique challenges that aren't faced elsewhere, simply because of the way that high school football in the state is structured, because of the UIL and how they only have the two private schools with Jesuit and Strake allowed in it. And then, there's basically nobody else allowed, as opposed to you go to California or you go to Ohio or Georgia or Florida. And there's just all these teams playing against one another. And so I think that, private schools do face unique challenges that public schools don't, not only in, getting themselves the exposure that they, in my opinion, deserve, but also in just kind of, building the brand of private school football. It's difficult. It's much more difficult because this is, plain and simple. This is a state that when people think about high school football, more often than not, they're thinking about public school football. It's not a knock. It's just kind of the reality of the situation. Now, that said, the thing that I always go back to as far as private schools and why I find them compelling and why I think that it's worth paying attention to, even if you don't have, if you're a neutral fan and you don't have a dog in the hunt, it's worth paying attention to, is because there's really good football. And it's not just the players. The players are obviously great. And we'll talk about a number of them and how many great players there are in the private school ranks. I think it's the matter of the depth of coaching in this state. And a lot of that just comes down to wanting to compete against the best. Plain and simple, Texas high school football coaches are the best in America. That's not even really an opinion at this point. I think that's just more of a stated fact. And so for me, that is true in the private school ranks as well, is that the depth of coaching there is insane. It's really, really good. Everywhere you look, every Friday night or Thursday night or Saturday night, you've got a matchup of two really good coaches and two really good coaching staffs. They're going to go at it and they're going to kind of try to out scheme one another. That to me is as compelling as the individual playmakers that you're going to see out there on a Friday night. The coaching matchup is what really sets, I think, Texas high school football apart, and in turn, private school high school football in the state of Texas. Is that the coaching here, we take it for granted. It is outrageous how good these coaches are. You got coaches who come in from every other state in the union because they want to they want to prove it against the best. The example I use a lot, and this is in the public school ranks, but there's a coach named Mark Del Percio, who is like the winningest coach in Delaware high school football history. Like he's got like a million state titles or something like that. Like absolute, like just king up there in Delaware. And he moved down to take the job at Orange Grove. And he did it. And we asked him, why do you do that? And he goes, well, because I got to prove it against the best. Like winning in Delaware is one thing, but doing it here in Texas means you've proved something. And I think that is very true in the Texas, in the private school ranks as well, is that these coaches are out there to prove, yeah, I'm one of the best coaches in America at any level. The only place you can do that is in the state of Texas. So that's a long answer to your short question.
No, I think that's absolutely true. You see coaching throughout the state is just great. Everywhere you go, I'm blessed that I can get to travel to a lot of games during the year. And I just love seeing the coaching staffs on each place and, how well they are, just how smart they are and knowledgeable at the game. And also just how good they are with their players, just that the chemistry they build with that team, that bond is always just so special throughout the state. Talent wise, I forgot who said it, but someone came on and said that, you're not going to face maybe 11 on 11 for the teams like the Parishes, the Nolans back last year. 11 on 11, they can compete with a lot of teams. The depth, when they start building the depth of some of those teams, is where you see the private and the public school kind of differ. Because, you can find talent anywhere from, 6A to 1A. But I think, the depth is what makes it change,
I think that's true. And I think that your top line talent, as far as some of the best private schools against some of the best public schools, that top line talent is even. Sometimes private school will be a little bit ahead. Sometimes, the public school will be a little bit ahead, but generally speaking, on balance, it'll end up being about even. Where the public schools, and I think just it's a plain numbers game, is their depth. Like the depth has got a lot of the public schools, especially at the 6A and 5A level, which is where a lot of those, and we'll talk about some of the games with public schools taking on private schools. The 6A and 5A is where they're going to find that kind of top level talent matchup. But they're also going to be at a depth disadvantage there. Yeah. And so that's why, to me, to go back to the coaching thing, what really sets great coaches apart is the ability to have, our ones are great, but our twos are really good too. And if one of those guys drops out, we have a capable backup to step in. And that's kind of probably where the difference between the good and the great is, and probably the difference, the main challenge that I would say that private schools would face going up against public schools.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the second question I kind of wanted to talk about was, kind of a big one, is, the transfers. Transferring has become such a huge thing. And if you don't want to talk about it, let me know, by the way. But, transferring is not a new thing. It really isn't. It's been around for a lot of years, but you see it a lot in the private school rankings, a lot. And you see it from them coming in and them coming out. You see Nolan, Parrish, John Paul a couple of years ago, when those guys came in, they made a lot of huge success really quickly. But then you see kind of like Nolan last year, or I guess technically this year, you see a lot of people leave. John Paul, you had Terrence Brooks, leave there. You have Cam Robertson leaving there too. So you see transferring throughout the state. I kind of just wanted, what are your thoughts on, transferring in the state? And if you don't want to talk about it, let me know.
Oh, it's fine. Look, it's, what are they going to do? Fire me? Yes. The answer is yes, they will fire me. No, it's a sticky wicket, right? And you see it kind of both ways. I think that in the past, I think the big concern from public school coaches was that these private schools were coming and they were saying, hey, come play for us. And you were seeing some public school kids going over to the private schools, and that still happens. Yeah. But now I think that, I'd love to see some numbers on it, but I would bet that it's more net zero than anything. That as many players are transferring from public to private, the same number are transferring from private to public, and there's some reasons for that. I think that there are private schools that are, how do I want to phrase this? There are some private schools that are that because of the big brand name, you want to go play for a big brand name. And if you're playing at let's just say a lower brand name public high school, right? You may want to go play for a bigger private. You may believe that I can get more exposure by going and playing for a Nolan or a Prestonwood or a Kincaid or any of these big private schools, right?
Right.
But on the other hand, there's also guys who are looking around and they're saying, I want to go and move over to the public side. I also think that, first of all, I think that on balance, it's about a net zero. Some years there are going to be more kids that go to the public schools. Some years are going to be more kids that go to the private schools. But I also think that it's not necessarily, the numbers are not necessarily huge. Like they're big names, right? They're big names. And that tends to be what grabs headlines, but it's not necessarily like as widespread as I think people maybe fear or maybe think that it is. Because I think most players want to play at one program and stick there, and I think that's what you see more often than not. So I think the transfer problem, so to speak, is a little bit overstated. I understand why it concerns some people, but I don't necessarily buy it as some sort of like existential threat to public high school football, private high school football. I think both of them have an ecosystem that's pretty healthy.
Yeah, I agree.
I do want to hit on the brand name thing. I want to raise another point. So, probably is the biggest brand name that's ever existed in Texas private school football. It's not the name of a school. It's Deion Sanders.
I was literally about to say that.
That happened with Trinity Christian probably 4 or 5 years ago now. I just want to say, and I'll tread lightly here because all this stuff gets in really murky water. But I played that team 2 years in a row. And the fact that team was playing us was very, very unfair. So, it creates this really big entity. But I like how you brought up brand name, because that really, really makes you look at the whole transferring in and out in a different light. And it makes you realize how it really can turn into a net zero once you realize there's brand names on both sides of this game.
Yeah. And I think that there have been some years where it seemed like there's a bunch of players going to the private school ranks. And there's been some years where it feels like, I think kind of like this year, where it feels like there's been a pretty big movement of private school kids to the public school ranks. I think it just kind of evens out. Like it doesn't keep me up at night, plain and simple. And I think both private school high school football and public school high school football in Texas they're really healthy right now. Like there's not, we can nitpick about what we would prefer to happen, this or that, but I also just don't think that it's necessarily all that existential of a crisis for either kind of sphere.
Yeah.
I think the only problem was like I was gonna say, problem was even when I'm pretty sure all of us were in high school when Trinity Cedar Hill was trying to roll.
You're making me feel so old, dude. It's okay.
Hey,
Go on.
Here's the thing about that. That may just be when we were in high school, but I'm going to be completely honest. Cedar Hill ran football, basketball, whatever sport they wanted to run, they ran it. Just because in reality, they had the power to do that. And I'm going to harp on Taps here because it was their fault. They didn't step in fast enough to kick them out until basically later down the line when that happened. And yeah, we all faced them. My school faced them in basketball playoffs, and we actually won, funnily enough. But no, it was a lot of time we got crushed in football. Why was this team that was filled of stars and a coach that played in the NFL as a Hall of Famer, coming into Texas private school and playing in Division II? I was like, why is this happening? Why am I dealing with that? Right. So it was
the one thing I'll say about this, and this is where I'll tread lightly.
Yeah.
I do think that the private school ranks, you do tend to see a little bit more of these kind of controversies, right? And a little bit more of these kind of these, I don't want to say problems, these issues crop up, let's just say. And in say what you want about the UIL, but the UIL has pretty firm guidelines that they tend to stick to.
Yeah.
And that has been, to me, one of the things that they do well is that they say, here are the rules, we're going by it. Yes, that means some people's ox is going to get gored, but it's just a matter of that's the way that we do business. And in the private school ranks, I think because it's always they're shifting sands in the private school ranks. You have to navigate that as well as obviously putting a great football team on the field. So there's an extra added element of difficulty just because the private school ranks are an evolving. They're at least more quickly evolving than say the public school ranks.
I will immediately say this, and I think what you'll realize is part of the reason why we even do this podcast. And the reason why we gave out awards last year, it's just because honestly, I and this is just my opinion. Don't take anybody else's opinion on here from this. This is my personal opinion, but I really feel like there's a reason why we do this podcast and we highlight certain players in private school sports that in reality are different guys are being highlighted by TAPS and in the rewards aspect at the end of the year. Like we try to highlight as non-biased as possible on that kind of spectrum. And I think on a UIL scale, there's so many people that are covering UIL in that aspect that they can't like, make up a ton of stuff about like certain awards and stuff like that because there's too many people watching that scene, when in reality the coaches in private schools can say, well, you really haven't seen him, so I can make up whatever I need to say about him and he can get this award over this guy, when in reality we try to come in and be like, actually we've been watching every single one of those games and we can tell you the real guys that deserve those awards. So that's a little bit on our aspect, just because when you don't have as much coverage, you kind of can make some stuff up along the way and just say here and there. But with y'all and how y'all cover most of UIL and all that kind of stuff, there's too many bright lights, too many cameras, too much stuff looking down on that stuff. And you can't, and you just can't make that stuff up. You know what I'm saying? Like it's different.
That's interesting.
That is. I think for all of us, we don't want private school to be the Mater Days and St. John Bosco's over in Cali. We don't want private school ball to reign supreme and have all these guys come in every year. Personally, I don't want that. I want it to be balanced. And I think it's a good balance this year. And I'm happy to see where it's going. And I think it's a very positive thing, because I think when you want to transfer is really just when you want to have a better environment or something like that. And I think you see that both ways,
And you never, one thing I'll just say is that you never know. It's easy to paint with a broad brush and say, oh, well, this kid is transferring to this school for this reason. Yeah. But everyone's situation is different, like I've learned that in covering, I'll use an example. I've learned that in coaching changes, that there will be there's 300 coaching changes every offseason, right? And it's easy to paint with a broad brush and be like, oh, well, he's leaving there to go to this job. But the problem is that then when you have something that doesn't make sense, like we had a coach go from a 5A school to a 2A school, go from Denison to Tioga. And like people were like, why in the world would he go there? And the reason is for family reasons. He wanted to get out to a small town and stuff like that. Like there's a lot of different reasons that people do that from the coaching perspective. And that holds true in the private school ranks. They private school ranks. These kids are more often than not just making what they feel is the right decision for them. And that it's hard to fault parents for saying, we believe this is the right decision for our kid. And as a dad, I certainly can appreciate that.
Yeah. No, I really, really like how you just put all that, because so often we just think of their kids and these coaches as statistics when they're not. They're human beings and they're real people, and there's emotions that come into play in these decisions. And so often we look over that. So I really like how you humanize the people that are making the decisions to kind of maintain this equilibrium between public and private school football.
That's all I'm trying to do, man. Just trying to sum it all up. It's kind of my job to kind of sum it all up. Can I tell you about a text message I just got?
Yeah.
Okay. So I got a text message from a coach who said that, I won't name names, but they said that this is on the bulletin board in a locker room at a local high school. I should say local high school in the state of Texas. And it is their district preview that has been cut out, where we picked them to finish 4th out of 5 teams.
Grace did that one year. I remember that.
That's the we get that a lot. Where it's that's the thing. But here's the thing: you talk with coaches, and they'll tell you that they would much rather be picked like last than first. Yeah. Absolutely, they want it to do. And you also have to. Oh, I'm going to make some friends in the coaching community with this one. Plain and simple, there are sandbaggers out there. plain and simple. Coaches who know they've got a really good team, and then they'll be like, "Oh, I don't know how good we're going to be." And like, we have to kind of sift through it and be like, "All right, no, coach, we know you're going to be really good. You're blowing smoke." There's a number of them that are sandbaggers that'll be like, "Oh no, I think you should rank us last in the district." It's like, coach, you've won the district 16 consecutive times. Chill out.
There is one team I want to say so badly that both of you probably know that I will not say, but perfectly.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, when
Sandbaggers, man.
Yeah. Also when we did rankings for just like awards and stuff, it was the same way. Like people, that goes into it. It's crazy. But let's go into like, while you're here now, let's go into these last 5 games. I mean, for us, probably the biggest games of the week. We'll start off with the first game being Grapevine Faith versus Covenant Christian. Grapevine Faith, new head coach a year ago, having the change, losing one of the best running backs, honestly, in DFW, and Mark Saunders last year, who was a great guy for him when Deuce Hogan was there. Deuce is now gone. His father is now transferred now to Covenant and coaching now down there, or not Covenant, sorry, Cypress. And, they have the other Cross brother and Chase Cross there now. Carson was at the Fourth Christian last year, and they're in this gray area of, they're not elite as they once were when they won it, a couple years back when I was in high school, and not a terrible team or any of the bottom of the division. They're still right there at the top, but they just right now, I don't think they're the top as they usually are. And on the other side, you have Covenant, who won the state championship last year, lose a lot of guys, but still return most of their main talent, including one of the best defensive lineman in the state for 23, Eno Etta. Sorry, he'll get mad at me because I said that wrong. Eno Etta. And then also Christian Wells, who, of course, is the son of Vernon Wells, the younger one. And they have other talent, there too. And it's a really good team of, like, a game that we're going to talk about right after this too, of, can a good team in D2 get beat by basically the best team in Division 3 in TAPS? So, for me, I think it's going to be interesting, because I think Grapevine will have the better quarterback in this scenario, and I think they'll have some of the threats on the outside. But I think for my pick, at least, I'm going to say I might go bold, and I think I'll go the Division 3 team. I think I'll go Covenant here, just because I think the two talented guys they have on that roster, and Eno, after, talking to him over this offseason, before he had around 15 sacks last season. And that was before he really even was in the weight room, finally got with a trainer this offseason. And you're talking about a guy who's a top 130 player in the country on this team in private school. I mean, 6'5", all of that jazz, can wreak havoc. And then an athlete like Christian Wells, who I believe before he got hurt was averaging 6 interceptions on the season, I think only halfway through. So you have two guys who are ball hawks, a ball hawk and a just monster on the defensive line. And I think those two guys are going to make it hard for Chase Cross to win this game. So that is going to be my pick. And I guess, Greg, if you want to go now, You can go now.
Sure. I'm happy to. You summed it up really well. Here's a couple of things that I'll keep in mind. One thing that I think is interesting about Grapevine Faith is this is a team that loses Mark Saunders. And I would say they arguably lost, I would say maybe their most valuable player in Caden Carter, their big offensive lineman. Yep. Who I think could be a real star there at Mary Hardin Baylor. Mm-hmm. But they bring back a lot of the worker bees, like a lot of the little guys is the wrong word, but a lot of the guys who don't get the headlines, who come in and that kind of make that team go. For Covenant, they have the superstars back. Like, they've got a lot of those stars that are back. Here's why I'm taking Covenant. I'm taking Covenant because it's week 1 and defenses are almost always ahead of offenses in week 1. And right now, if you're asking me which defense I feel like is probably going to be the better defense, by the time it's all said and done, I say it's Covenant. Now, could Grapevine Faith end up being a state title contender? Yeah, absolutely. If things come together, if they find it, if they find a running back, back there, if Chase Cross kind of makes that next step as a quarterback, then I think they could certainly be in that hunt. But for now, defenses tend to be a little bit more gelled in week one than offenses, and so I'm gonna go with Covenant in this one.
Absolutely. Wes?
Ryan, you go next. I got some theatrics planned for this one.
There you go. Honestly, if I'm being completely honest, I don't see this game like being close, in my opinion. I'm sorry. I think Covenant is just a really, really, really good team. And I love Phil Toe. I think it says it's Toe, right? Phil Toe.
Mhm.
He's great coach. We had him. I mean, wasn't he one of our finals last year? If not the winner of our right?
Yeah.
Like he is such a good coach for this Covenant team. He proved that with a guy like Austin Sheets as quarterback that they could run the show. And then, I mean, they still got great players. I love that there's a 4-star at this capacity in Division III, playing at a school like this. I think that brings a lot to the table. And I completely agree with you, Greg, when it comes to defense week one. They're fresh. They're ready to go. They've been ready to pounce all the way since December, November of last year. Like, they are ready to pounce on their senior year. Also, not to get into all that, but I mean, these guys are in the same threat as they were last year. Season is on the line anytime. COVID could come back anytime. These kids are ready to play whenever need be. And if their season gets cut short in their senior season, they're hoping that those games that they played are insanely valuable. So I wanted to say that before any of the games we got through, but specifically with this Covenant Christian team, I like them a lot. I've always liked them. And although Chase Cross, I'd be happy to see what he can do in his junior season. I do think Covenant Christian is going to take it out on top here. I'm a really big fan of Christian Wells as well. I wanted to say that.
Oh, here we go. So, first of all, I'm going to use a little bit of betting terminology here. And I want to say full disclosure, you cannot bet on Texas high school football.
Do not bet on high school football. Don't do it. Now go on with your betting analysis.
Okay, thank you. You scared the crap out of me. So basically, this is a really tough game for me. David Campbell's has Grapevine picked over Southwest Christian and Fort Worth to win their division. And while I'm not completely sure how accurate that is, stop me if you've heard that before, they certainly are a good team in Division II. However, Covenant is special. I'd go so far to say that this could be the best Division III team in recent memory, and I'll stick by that even if I'm wrong. This game, more importantly, is going to show how great the talent gap is between TAP's Division II and Division III. That being said, I've never shied away from a hot take, which is less of a hot take now that the three of you have already made your picks. But the inaugural Wes Mortal Lock of the century is Covenant Christian -3 points against Grapevine Faith. I believe in Phil Toe. I believe in Enau Etta. By the way, I know y'all had to like the lights. I'm going to bring that back.
Yeah. Yes.
But I believe in Covenant Christian is what I'm trying to say. Like you said, I really like how you said the defenses are usually ready first. I think Covenant's defense is going to be nasty, spearheaded by Etta. I really, really believe that they're going to win this game, even though they're a smaller team, and prove that the talent gap is a lot closer than we realized between the two divisions.
So one last thing on this, because I know we got more games to get to. I will certainly be watching, what this game looks like and who wins the game, obviously. But I also think I want to see like how this game feels. If Covenant comes out and they put the boots to Grapevine Faith, what I still think is a pretty darn good Grapevine Faith team. I think we all pick Covenant, but if they put the boots to them. Like, look, we've got Colleyville Covenant winning D3 in Dave Campbell's Texas football. I don't think that gap between them and what I think is probably the second best team in D3, which probably Cypress Community right now, those would probably be the top two. I could be convinced that gap is larger if they were to go out there and really put the boots to Grapevine Faith. But I also think Grapevine Faith, look, these are two teams that are pretty local to one another, a little bit of rivalry here. It could be a fun game. And I don't want to put too much data. I don't want to put too much into 1 week's worth of data, but
absolutely.
If Covenant goes out there and beats them like 63-7, which I don't see happening. But if they were to do that, like that's certainly going to raise my eyebrows.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And let's now talk about that second team, probably in Division III. Cypress Christian is facing Fort Worth Christian with a good first round matchup, I think. A test for, Chris Hogan's going back up to face one of those teams he knows really well in Fort Worth Christian. They're returning 17 starters this year, which is really, really special for Cypress. They lost 40-30 in the state championship against Covenant last year. And it's another game of, can a top D3 team and beat a good, D2 team? And that's what's going to be interesting, with Chris Hogan at the helm. And I think, one of the best, we talked about it a long time ago, one of the best, coaches, regardless of, private or public, but for sure in the private rankings he's one of the best. And, you have guys like Maxwell Landrum, who I thought was one of the best private school quarterbacks in Houston last year, put on a show last year, who I was like, who is this kid? And then getting to go talk to him, I was like, all right, I trust this kid to go lead that team for sure. Other guys, Cody Andrews, Jackson Owen, all those guys are going to be really, really core and key pieces to this team to see if they can do it again. There's another good team, down there in San Antonio, Holy Cross, that's going to put a little bit more pressure of them next year in that southern way to go to the state championship. But I think Cypress is going to be that team up down there. Fourth Christian, on the other hand, I mean, you lose Carson Cross to, I think he's going to ACU now. You lose other guys. I mean, they're still talent. They have so much talent, receiver wise and skill position wise. They probably are in that district of, Faith, Southwest Christian, and them, and also Legacy. I mean, though they probably have the most skilled talent there, which is insane. And having a transfer in from Mansfield Lake Ridge, so he's, I believe that is 6A, correct? So that's a 6A tested quarterback now. And you have Jacob Trimble, one of the best wide receivers in private school. And he's only going to be a junior. And you have other guys who are going to be core guys for that team. I'm going to put Fort Worth Christian. I think this is the thing about them. They're not going to be well in the trenches at the beginning, but I do think their skill, if they put it together, I think they can do it. And, I went and saw them face my alma mater, Southwest Christian, last year in I think it was quarters, I believe. And they had so many chances at that game to win it, and they just couldn't because they were not making those catches that they needed to. If they did, that game would have been such a different game, and I think honestly my Eagles probably would have lost it. But I think if they could put it together, they have a chance to be pretty freaking good in Division II. So my pick is going to be Fort Worth Christian. And you know what, Ryan, you can go behind me, and Greg, you can end it for us.
So if I'm being completely honest here with myself, I actually when I played sports and stuff like that, we had Fort Worth Christian and Grapevine Faith both in my division in high school.
Yep. Now,
I will say this. I think Lacey has gotten not as great at football in that little aspect. But I think Fort Worth Christian and Grapevine have stayed being top dogs. I love the fact that Chris Hogan gets to go play against one of the teams that was in that division. That shows a lot to me. And it shows that, in my opinion, he knows how this team is run. He knows the support and the fan base behind this team. He knows every single aspect of this team. He knows guys that have been in this system for a long time just because he's been in that area, in that division. Now, if anybody doesn't know this, Trevor Andrews played for Lake Ridge, okay? Lake Ridge went 0-10 last year. Keep that in mind. Now, I'm not gonna sound stupid here. They on their schedule was Denton Geyer, Cedar Hill, DeSoto, Waxahachie, Duncanville, and Midway. So, don't get me wrong. They're playing some of the best teams in the state. But he wasn't he wasn't doing all that over at what's it called? At
Lake Ridge.
Lake Ridge. So I'm sorry, but you're coming into a brand new team, playing your first game with this team. You have a great wide receiver in Jacob Trimble. I bet they don't know how to use each other yet, if I'm being completely honest. I feel like Jacob Trimble needs to adapt to Trevor Andrews, and I think that they need to figure out their kinks before they can beat a team of level of Cypress Christian and beat a coach like Chris Hogan. That's my true opinion. I think Cypress Christian wins this, but I do have it close. I'm going to go probably 7 points, like 7 points is what I'm gonna say on that.
So,
Yeah, I'm going to keep it quick here because I know everyone's just watching this to hear Greg talk. But I think we're in a very similar position to the last game where it's a very good D3 team versus a relatively good D2 team. Personally, I like Fort Worth in this matchup. It really goes against all my reasoning for the previous game, but I think the talent distribution really favors the Division II school in this game. But, I am uneasy, like y'all mentioned, betting against Coach Hogan, as I watched firsthand last year as he took my alma mater to OT, and we were much more talented. I like Fort Worth Christian by about a touchdown here.
Walker, Wes, guys, you're falling into a trap. Okay. And here's the trap you're falling into, because I've fallen in this trap before. You're getting starry-eyed because of the skill guys. And their skill guys are great. Don't get me wrong. I think Fort Worth Christian skill guys are fantastic. I do think Trevor Andrews is better than he showed last year. And Jacob Trimble is a superstar, right? And Gus Sanchez and Luke Anderson and all these guys I think they've got awesome, awesome playmakers. I think Cypress is going to eat up front. Ooh. I think they're going to mash up front. I think they're a super physical team. I mean, it's not just guys like Griffin Fisk at the linebacker spot or Jake Swan, who's a two-way offensive defensive lineman. They've got a 6'1", 290-pound freshman playing offensive line. They've got a 5'10", 270-pound sophomore playing offensive line. I just think that they're going to have an advantage in the trenches. And in the end, that's what's going to come down to. Yes, I think Jacob Trimble is going to get hits. But I think in the end, I think I go with the team that's going to be better in the trenches. And I think that's Cypress Christian. I think they're the team you got to keep an eye on.
I honestly, I gotta respect that, going down there, seeing those guys, they play physical, and,
they eat up front, man.
Yeah,
they do.
Absolutely. And, when a team coached by Chris Hogan, one thing he teaches is physicality, and he makes sure they are in the trenches. They know what they're doing. So, I mean, you got to respect that. So
and hand up, I did get starry-eyed over the skill position play.
Hey,
you're looking at a former skill player. I can't help it.
I get it.
It's like a sports car. It's sexy to look at. I can't help it.
And you're talking to a former terrible offensive lineman. So I get it. We're just from two different worlds.
That's fair. Two different perspectives.
Hey, I have no judgment. I what's called. I didn't play football, so I just look at it and I go, all right, this quarterback has lost a lot of games. We're gonna say no on that part. That's all
I do want it on record. If Fort Worth wins this game, that I outpicked Greg Tepper. I want that on my
roast me.
I
mean, roast me
at Twitter at Greg Tepper. I picked over you.
Exactly right, man. Just roast me.
All right, let's move into the third game. Dallas Parish Episcopal versus Bel Air Episcopal. We're talking about the back-to-back, maybe future back-to-back state champs. You lose one of the most prolific. Thank you. It's not. It's one of those. It's one of those. College? Yeah, you are. Yeah, one of those days, man. And a guy like Preston Stone, who I think might win the job at SMU, maybe. I mean, he's facing Tanner Mordecai, so it's going to be an interesting battle, but you could see a guy like that win that first maybe job. Don't know for sure, but maybe. But so that's the big thing. They've always had talent, and they do have talent again this year. You got guys, you have the 4-star Daniel Demery, and you have Blake Youngblood, who I think is one of the most underrated wide receivers in the state. That kid can ball, like through and through. That kid can ball. And they have other guys, Andrew Paul, that defense of Keegan Addison and, Jalen Hall, right? Those guys are talented dudes. And the question always has been, after Preston Stone leaves, who's it going to be? And that's always been truly the question. And, that was a question when I went and asked them, in the spring, hey, what you thinking? And he's like, well, we're going to look into it. We're thinking about our guys, we're still looking into it. And I think, I haven't talked to Novikov in a while, but I think they're going to roll with the freshmen. And from the last thing I heard, unless anything changes, they got a kid who just kind of like the entire thing with Preston Stone back in the day, who was a Highland Park middle schooler who was going to be the future Highland Park guy. You got Sawyer Anderson coming from a middle school for Highland Park, coming in to maybe take the job. And if anyone is capable of putting a freshman in line, it's going to be Daniel Novikov, because if he trusts him, he trusts him. And if that guy or one of the other quarterbacks can do the job for Parrish this year, you got a three-peat. I really think so. They're too talented. And, Preston Wood's going to be one to maybe be up there and compete. And honestly, I think San Antonio Central Catholic, of course, down low, that's going to be a team to beat. But I think Parrish is just too talented. Now, on the other side, if we talked about this maybe a couple months ago when they probably scheduled this game, Bel Air Episcopal would have been a much tougher game. Losing Chase Jenkins to transfer, and also Maurice Williams, who was 247, just put him as, I think, the number one rated guy in class of 2024, who's now at Shadow Creek, I believe. Those two guys, minus those guys leaving, minus, the losing of one of the best players in last year of Donovan Jackson, and the two other offensive linemen of Luis Shariva, I think that's how you say it maybe, and Cullen Montgomery. That's losing a lot of stars on your team. I mean, in my opinion, I think this is going to be a bigger win for Parrish than it probably was expected a couple months ago. But I mean, Bel Air Episcopal has always been well coached. You see guys with Steve, I think Steve Lyons, he literally just put 3 guys in the league this last year with Marvin Wilson, Walker Little, and also, oh my gosh, why can't I remember his name? Jalen Waddle. Mm-hmm. Those 3 guys, I can't believe that also those 3 were on the same team in high school, which is absolutely insane. But Bel Air's always been well coached, always had really good talent. They will still have that talent here this year. Bo Edwards is a guy I really, really like in the trenches. And that might be the thing, is maybe in the trenches, can they do it? We're just going to have to see. But I'm going to say Parrish in this one. And I guess, Greg, you want to go next? Or
yeah, I'm going to be real boring here. This is before Chase Jenkins transferred out. They were already going to have to replace all 5 offensive linemen. I mean, and that is the kind of thing that, again, I'm not saying that may not work I'm not saying they're doomed, but like, that's the kind of thing that it takes time. It takes time for them to get together, and it takes game reps. And especially going up against a team in Parrish that it has the pedigree that feels like they're going to be right away. They're going to be really good. And if they do go with this freshman, the thing I do have to throw out there is that Sawyer Anderson is the grandson of Donnie Anderson. Donnie Anderson, the cover boy of the 1965 edition of Dave Campbell's Texas Football. So of course I have to go with Parrish in this one.
There you go. Stay in the home. And I guess, Wes, you can go now.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm going to say the same thing everyone's going to say. I think Parrish is going to win. I think they're going to win by at least about 3 touchdowns. I mean, Bel Air is just in between a rock and a hard place. Losing Jenkins and Williams really, really hurts. And also put some respect on SBC wrestling state champion Bo Edwards' name. But I think I just simply, he's obviously going to be a rock for that Bel Air defense. I just don't think it's enough. And like you said, having to replace that entire offensive line, which is, again, basically the core of your offense, it's not a recipe for success. And Parrish is just always seems to be a well-oiled machine. So, give me Parrish and quite a lot of points.
Ryan?
Yeah, I think I'm right there with y'all. I didn't really have any idea that, that Sawyer Anderson was going to be coming in. I assume they're just going to grab one of the 19 million robots that they keep on campus at Dallas Parish, and they're just going to be like, all right, here you go. Come in here, and you're going to come play quarterback for us. But no, honestly, I love this for Dallas Parish because, I mean, get Sawyer as many reps as possible in this game and just make him, feel comfortable with playing on a high school scene. Yes, Bel Air Episcopal has become a lot, different of a team than what you thought they were when you scheduled them. But I think that's great for Sawyer. I mean, he's coming from middle school ball to then go play on the biggest high school name in TAPS, right? And obviously, he was going to go to Highland Park, which I realize is one of the biggest names in all of Dallas. But I mean, he's coming as a freshman. He's like, what, 14, 15 years old, having to run this team that is like, two-time state championship in the past 2 years, 2 years, whatever. I like to see how many reps he can get. And instead of calling how many times I think, how much they're going to win by, I want to go and say, I think Daniel Demery, is that how you say his name?
Demery, yeah.
Demery. I think he'll have 4 touchdowns. And I think
as a DB,
what?
As a DB?
Oh, my bad. I said it's a running back. My bad. No, Blake Youngblood. I meant to say.
Yeah, Blake Youngblood.
I think he'll have maybe not 4, but I think he'll have three touchdowns, and I think Sawyer Anderson and him can combine for 3 touchdowns. That's my hot take.
Here's the last thing I'll close out on this. That normally a freshman quarterback would scare me to death, but I would also say that Daniel Novikov has earned the benefit of the doubt that he's not going to put a kid in a situation that he's not ready for. And furthermore, the talent around him is going to be so supremely good that it may not matter, right? Yeah. That Demery and Youngblood and we haven't even mentioned Andrew Paul, who I think is awesome, and guys like that he doesn't need to go out there and win the game by himself. So he just needs to take care of the football. And if he does that, then I think that they're gonna win this opener.
Yeah, absolutely. And even on offensive line, Parrish lost a couple of guys to graduation last year, but they still return a guy like Aiden Gilmore, who's going to be one of the underrated 23 offensive linemen in the state. So I think a guy like that, who's really respected, a lot of the trainers up there in DFW really like him. I think that's going to be having a guy stand there for the next 2 years protecting him. And I think, is Coach Allen over there at Highland Park going to get a little annoyed that they keep stealing Highland Park transfers quarterbacks?
Buddy,
but, I mean, it's also Highland Park. They will find a quarterback every year.
They have a tree.
Yeah,
they just go out back and they pick a quarterback off the tree.
Absolutely.
It's Brennan Storr is his name. Keep an eye on him.
Yeah, he'll be really good. I'm excited to go see him ball.
Yeah.
Moving on to, I think honestly, the last game we'll talk about is probably the biggest, but this game right here is going to probably be the biggest game private school wise this week. You're talking about Houston Kincaid versus Second Baptist, who honestly are probably 1 and 2 of the best teams in Houston private school wise. Houston Kincaid, there wasn't an SBC championship winner last year, but they were probably, the people who basically, the not official winners of the SBC last year. That's how you say that, right? Mm-hmm. And then Second Baptist, who lost in the semifinals last year to Austin Regents, who ultimately won it over a great game over Dallas Christian. But they got all their talent, most of their talent back, and they got better. And you're bringing in a guy, you lose Finn Nicholson right there for Second Baptist, who went to Colorado School Mines, who, I believe was the starter for Bridgeland before Connor Wegman came into town. I believe that is how it was. Then he transferred over. But Connor Wegman, Giga Maggies, love that guy. Anyways, they bring in Turner Murdoch, who I believe has a pedigree of his family being very good athletes. And I believe in family, they had a guy who went and played baseball for UT. I believe that's what someone told me. So, that kid is going to be, I think is going to be probably the most special young guy. I think just seeing him in person and seeing him throw the ball around down there in Houston, one of these days in the summer, that kid, they got something there. And if he can play well, they got a lot of talent around there. Well, the other side, Kincaid's got talent too, with the 2 Bell brothers of Micah and Dylan. Dylan going to Georgia next year, who I think is a really, really underrated player. I think he can rely on it. He's a lot like, I'm not going to make the same comparison, but in a way, he's like A&M Anaya Smith in a way where he's very versatile as a player. He can run the ball. He can be on the outside. He's just a very versatile player. He's on I believe they're one of their best 4x1 teams as well. So he's a fast guy too. He runs crisp routes. He does all that. That's why he's going to Georgia. Micah Bell is probably a better, honestly, talent than him anyways, as one of the best players in the 23 class. Those 2 guys are going to make it hard to beat. Plus also Cameron Henry, who's going to Harvard, next year, and their quarterback, Louis Gustafson. They have talent. It's the reason they won it SBC basically last year. but I think my pick is going to be Second Baptist. I think their depth is just going to be better. And I think in the trenches as well, I think that's where they might have the edge over them. Colin Hedges is I believe he was all district in offense and defense, and I believe all state in defense. You quote me if I'm wrong on that. But in the trenches, I think that's what's going to be the overtaking for Second Baptist being the best private school in Houston. Eli Smith is a great back. Everett Skillen is a very underrated guy going to Brown. My pick, I'm gonna say Second Baptist. So whoever wants next, go for it.
I'll take it real quick. So I'm actually going to be covering this game on Friday, and I'm absolutely just geeked to be there. You said it perfectly, describing it. It's basically a fight for dominance between two of the best private schools in Houston. Both are obviously insanely talented, while Kincaid holds two of our top 6 private school players in the state, and Dylan and Micah Bell, who I think are both just freak athletes. I also do think, though, that Second Baptist is going to be a dark horse for state champion this year in D2. I really do think they're that good. I have that much faith in Coach Pirtle. I think he's developing a great program down there. But the question for this game is, who's going to stop Dylan Bell? Someone from the Second Baptist secondary is going to have to step up and figure that out. And will that happen? We're going to have to wait and see Friday. I don't really know. But I think in this situation, it's going to come down to talent versus scheme. And this time, I think talent has a slight edge, which is why I'm going to take Kincaid in this game. And, maybe I'm going to be guilty of getting caught looking at skill players again. Who knows? But that is largely kind of what I'm looking at here, but we'll see.
Ryan, you can go next, and Teb, you can end us off for this game.
I honestly think that, you could argue Second Baptist is right there in the aspect of just being ready to go. They got a chip on their shoulder from last year about how they wish they would have made the championship and stuff like that for D2. But I would actually argue that Kincaid has a bigger chip on their shoulder. Imagine those guys last year that didn't get to play, and then we're basically told, oh yeah, so we're actually not going to even have a playoffs this year, and you're just going to cut your entire season short. And you've been waiting this entire time to play football. Oh yeah, go play football now and see how you do. I think Kincaid's going to come out there like the Bulls running. I honestly think that you could see them going out there. I love the Bell brothers. I think that they can show what they're all about. Yes, that is a lot of star power in that aspect, but give me star power and give me, the fight to want to have a real season. If I'm being completely honest, go on, give me Kincaid.
I think this is the best private school game of the week. And I'm really excited about it. And it's one of those games that I want them to play now. And then I also want them to play in week 10, because I think that they're going to be very different teams then. Here's why. And I think this game is tight, and it's not, it's going to be easy to look at this as a referendum of SPC versus TAPS. And I want to make sure we're holding off on that, because I don't necessarily think that it's going to be as telling as that necessarily. It may be in other circumstances, but here's why I'm going to take Second Baptist. First of all, Kincaid's going to have the single individual best player on the field in Dylan Bell. That kid's a freak show. Yeah. That kid's unbelievable. I mean, he could start for any team in the state of Texas, plain and simple. I mean, that kid's unbelievable. And this team can absolutely fly. Cam Henry is a burner. They have got speed all over the field. This team is very, very fast. Where I worry about Kincaid and why I give Second Baptist the slight edge in this one, because both these guys have skill position players back. Kincaid, I think, is not going to be as deep. And I think the depth is going to be a bit of an issue. Specifically, I know they're going to have a number of guys going both ways, playing both ways. And I wonder, I see this game being an absolute barn burner coming into the fourth quarter, and then I wonder if Second Baptist, just by having a little bit more depth, has that slight edge. I think this game is fantastic. I could absolutely see it going either way. And like I said, I would like to see it in 10 weeks and see it again and just like kind of see how these two teams have grown. I think this game rules. I'm really excited about it. And I'm going to give the slight edge to Second Baptist, but I have like almost 0% confidence in it. I think this is a total coin flip type game.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what Coach Pirtle has done there over the years has been a really good job of keeping talent. And I know they haven't even, one of their coaches is Cecil Shorts III, who was a NFL player for the Jags for the longest time, was on my fantasy team probably back in the day. I mean, great. They have great coaches over there too. Just a great team. And I think they're finally ready to maybe they're going to try to beat Austin Regents in that semifinal matchup. If they can, that's going to be wait to see type of thing, but I think it's going to be closer to what people expect.
Mm-hmm.
So moving in to the final game, the Tom Landry Classic, I believe going to be played at our Allen High. I'm going to be after this game, hopefully. And I'm excited for this. It's going to be interesting because everything's going to roll around is what is Nolan going to do with the team they had last year, which could have compete with a lot of teams in the state. They lose a lot of the talent, probably their top profile guys. Most of them have transferred out. What are they going to do? They're left with still good talent. Don't get it twisted. They're still going to be a good team in private school, but that's the talent that set them over the edge last year to make that state championship is not there really anymore. But the one thing about Coach Bowden, right, is he'll get his guys ready. And guys will come in and all of that jazz, and they'll be ready to play. The quarterback battle will be interesting to see who will take over for Jimmy Taylor next year. I thought it was going to be Jeremiah Bledsoe, but I mean, you never really know. I don't know if they've officially named a starter, so I won't say that. I haven't talked to him or anything like about that, but they still got two dogs on the defensive line, and Caleb James and Curly Thomas. Caleb James, I think, is pass rush wise is up there with a lot of those dudes in 23 in the state. He's very, very, very good. But, and then never mind. But, and then you have Curly Thomas on the other side, just tall, lanky, just defensive end going to Cal, who was a dominant player last year, had one of the most sack, had a lot of those sack, one of the top players with sacks for the last year in private school. You have other guys, Simone Davis, Gerald Lacey, Trey Parks Vision, who's just a burner, 4.3 speed over there at the receiver position. They got dudes. But that's really all I'm going to say because this is Argyle. Argyle went, 16-0 last year, state champs. And I think this is going to be Argyle. Argyle have probably for smaller schools, probably one of the best offensive lines. I don't think any of their guys are under 6'3", 270. I mean, those guys, they're just, all those boys up there are just built to play football, and having him, and then you add in another private school name and Jaden Scarlett coming from Flower Mound Cormdale to there now, and you add him. I mean, you already have Riley Van Poppel on the defensive line and also, Michael Madry on the defensive line. And you add a guy like that, who is probably the best get off in the state. That's just disgusting. And I don't think with, Noah Ponce going to Duncanville, they don't really have any interior dudes on the offensive line that are really going to make an impact. So for me, I'm going to say Argyle all the way. It's going to be a good test though, to see how good Nolan is with all the guys leaving out. If they can keep it close, that's going to be interesting because that means they're going to be as good as coached as they were last year. It's going to be really interesting to see. But I think Argyle is just too talented, even with all the guys they lost last year and like Jasper Lott and their quarterback, they'll be fine. So, Ryan, you want to go?
Yeah, I'm not gonna say a lot. In all reality, I think you've said most of the stuff that needs to be said. Give me Argyle by 2 touchdowns, or even 3. I honestly could see it going like that. I just don't. I have had faith in Nolan Catholic, but too many guys they've lost. Too many guys, and I love Jaden Scarlett for Argyle. So give me Argyle 2 to 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to say a lot, so I can let the guy that actually covers Texas public school football say what he wants to say. But I think, I don't think the talent gap between Texas private and public schools getting any wider. However, Argyle is simply going to be just way too much for Nolan to handle. I think Argyle wins this handily.
So these are two of the, in my opinion, the best coaches in the state. I think David Bowden's a wizard, and what he does there at Nolan every single year is really impressive. And I love what Todd Rogers has done at Argyle. Todd Rogers' record, if you're interested, I've got it up here, is 210-37. That is pretty good. And Nolan, you're right. They've got a couple of cats. Curly Thomas is awesome. I think Caleb James is great. They were hit pretty hard by some key transfers and stuff like that. And so I want to be very clear that I like this Nolan team a lot. And what I'm about to say is not a reflection of how much I like this Nolan team. I think this is a bad matchup.
Yeah.
I think this is a bad matchup. And I'll tell you why. Because the thing that Nolan is going to do this year is get after the quarterback. They're going to get after the quarterback. They're going to put pressure on him. And they are running into an outrageous offensive line with Sheridan Wilson, with Nick Rubian, with Wes Tucker. I mean, this offensive line at Argyle is massive, and they are experienced, and they are good. They're not super duper deep, but they're very, very good. And that, to me, if you've got a team that is going to be able to mitigate your greatest strength, that's a problem. And so for me, I look at this and I worry about the matchup there. I just think that Nolan doesn't match up particularly well against Argyle. And furthermore, and this is just a little public school note, Argyle is always really good early. They come out of the oven baked. Okay. They are good right away. There are a lot of teams that get better as the years go on, as the season goes on. And to be clear, Argyle does get better, but it's not as stark because they're always really good in week one. And so that is, to me, for a team that is going to have a lot of pieces in play that needs to be put in place, playing football really in a major way for the first time there at Nolan, going up against a team that's a defending state champ that mitigates what they do best and that traditionally has started fast. I just don't love the matchup there for Nolan. I'd love to be wrong, but I think that Nolan is probably an underdog in this one, and arguably a sizable one. I think Argyle is as good. They're our pick to win 4A Division I this year, so there's no shame in losing to losing to Argyle should they do that. But yeah, I look at this and I think Nolan's an underdog here.
Yeah, without a doubt.
I was just gonna say exactly what you're saying. Nolan Catholic cannot take this loss to mean anything at all. In all reality, it literally means nothing because they could lose this game and win every other single game of the year besides maybe Parish, whatever. That they could win every single other game, and I wouldn't look any different. You're playing Argyle, like you're playing a 4A public school. Like I don't. And
furthermore, that's
for
for sure. And here's the other thing is that this game is not happening on accident. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like David Bowden knows what he's getting into. He knows because he wants to go out there and he wants to bow up. He wants to see his team get challenged. He wants to see his team get pushed. This is not like it's not just a hat rack for David Bowden. He's a smart guy. He knows what he's getting into. He knows that Argyle is going to test them in a big, big way. And so, especially in week one in a game like this, like the score line matters. Obviously, everyone's out there to win, but it's also about what you're gaining from these games. And I think Nolan's got a lot to gain from going up against one of the premier public school teams in the state.
I mean, I'm gonna say this one more time as well. I know I keep jumping in right after you say something, but think about this: Caleb and Curly go up against these offensive linemen. And then every other single offensive lineman that they play after this game all year long, I don't want to say a cakewalk because there are some good offensive linemen in Division I, but bro, they will be not anywhere compared to these offensive linemen.
They'll be tested. You know what I mean? They will be battle tested right from the jump.
I love that. I love the fact that they're going to get tested, and then from now on they'll be like, oh well, I'm ready to go. Like I'm ready to go. I'm ready to beat these guys.
Yeah. I think y'all both said it greatly. I mean, a team like Argyle, who last year in the week 2 beat Pleasant Grove, a good Pleasant Grove team week 2. I mean, they start fast, like you said, and they're going to be really, really good. For me, those are the 5 games. I mean, those are our picks, guys. I mean, I think that's really it for you, man. I think you can get out of here unless you have anything else you want to say. Anything else or?
No, that's about it. I appreciate you guys having me on your podcast and letting me yammer on about private school and high school football. It's kind of what I like to do. So you guys keep up the good work. I appreciate you guys having me on.
And
Yeah.
we want to say for sure, if for some reason you haven't gotten a copy of Dave Campbell's Texas Football, please go pick that up. Not just
No.
because we have Greg here on the podcast, but it is 100% the best source of football knowledge in the state. Like that's what I know I use, and I think both of them use when we're looking up players and research for this game. So please go pick that up.
Well, thank you. And also, if that's not enough, then I have a 2.5-year-old son who needs food. So that is also a reason to do it. But texasfootball.com/subscribe if you want to get your magazine mailed directly to you.
Yeah, man.
Do it.
We really thank you, man. We really, really thank you for doing this. I know it means a lot for us. You having a great guest like this for week 1. You ever need anything, give us a holler. You know how it is. But yeah, thank you, man.
Absolutely. Happy football season, boys.
Yes, sir.
Thanks, Red.
So once again, we want to say a huge thank you to Greg Tepper from Dave Campbell's Texas Football for coming on and just talking football with us. Like Walker mentioned, this is probably the biggest guest we could have had week 1. And again, I will plug it to the day I die. Go out and get Dave Campbell's Texas Football. It is the football Bible here in Texas. I'm a broken record. Anything that you want from any team in the state, private or public, it's in this book. Go get it, please. They do a tremendous job every year. But with that being said, that's about all that we have for today. I know for sure I will be at Houston Kincaid versus Houston Second Baptist, a matchup we have hyped tremendously that I'm very excited for. There's another game I'm looking at that I'll tease later in the week. Walker, do you want to see what game you're going to be at?
Yeah, I'm going to go to that Fort Worth Nolan versus Argyle game. I think Argyle is going to win it pretty heavily, but I still want to see how good that team will be. And, if I have to go cover Texas high school football anyways, might as well go represent private school and go watch that game. So yeah, that's the game I'm going to go to. Hopefully I can cover some more games down the line.
Yeah, 100%. But I know that we are all incredibly excited for Texas high school football to get starting back up. We're also incredibly excited to be giving you this coverage and this information on private schools that I guarantee you no one else around the state is giving you. But with that being said, that's all we have for today. So as always, I have been 1/3 of your hosting crew, Wes Tolleson. Walker Lott and Ryan Schroeder have excellently been themselves. We will see you in the next episode. Peace.